Well, let's start off with like the main takeaway from this is right now in the halls in DC, they are talking about minimum requirements, best practices and minimum requirements for healthcare, cybersecurity. Now, wouldn't it be great if you knew what those were ahead of time? Well, thankfully, I developed the ability to be psychic in my last marriage, and so we're going to be able to look a little bit ahead and see which best practices or where you might look for them, and at least we may not get down to the exact address, but we're going to get down to the neighborhood on that. So again, my name is Ty Greenhalgh. I'm the industry principal in healthcare for Medigate by Claroty. Medigate is a cybersecurity tool designed for healthcare specifically, and Claroty, who bought them, was more industrial cybersecurity. So together, actually go together real well, because all the industrial stuff, we can now apply that to building management systems, the facilities devices that are also on the network. So I'm also an ambassador for the Health and Human Services work group called 405D. We're going to go in and talk a little bit more about what 405D is. That's really where you're going to find the best practices. Kind of just real quick, just throwback. And Deborah, I was smiling when she came in here earlier, and she was telling me she's basically could give this history lesson. But back with the ARRA, where they wanted to kind of incent getting our electronic record, our medical records online back in the day, we didn't necessarily think about security back then. We didn't think about it enough. And what we did is we created the most valuable record in the entire world online without a lot of security thought. What could go wrong? And so the Cyber Security Act of 2015 by Senator Warner from the great state of Virginia put a document out, trying to help out with cybersecurity. There was a subsection in there called 405, which called out healthcare, said, hey, go do a risk assessment on our nation's healthcare, tell us what's wrong, and then what we need to do to fix it. About this time, WannaCry hit, shutting down medical facilities across the UK like dominoes. Luckily, we found the kill switch. Marcus Hutchins found the back door to that and shut it off before it got to the United States. He was a hero, white hat hacker, later arrested for selling Trojan banking malware. So he owns a black hat too. Out of the assessment on what's wrong with healthcare and cybersecurity, HICP, HICP, the Healthcare Industry Cybersecurity Practices, which we're going to talk more about, they created these. It's 5 top threats, like 87 best practices, 10 major categories of here's what you should do in healthcare, best practices, put out basically by the Health and Human Services Department, 405D group. They liked it so much, they created a law around it. High-tech, we're going to talk about that. Improving the nation's security, that's an executive order that came out by Biden, and that's really talking about, okay, still further, we need to do something which outlined the difference between IT and OT. Information technology, operational technology. If you haven't heard about this difference, you'll learn about it today. A lot of people don't know about it. It's brand new conversations, but it's definitely everybody that are making these new laws and trying to figure out how we're going to solve our cybersecurity problem across all critical infrastructures. They're talking about IT versus OT. And then the omnibus bill that just came out, giving the FDA new powers of authority with respect to medical device manufacturers. So that kind of gets us. That's where we are today. That came out in January. Now, I typically, I think that, 29.7387% of all statistics are made up on the spot. But if you look at the trends, if they're all going the wrong direction for us in cybersecurity and healthcare. So we got to do something. We got to do something, right? That's really I think everybody's position. But what do we do? Application attacks and system intrusion are going up. So they're the bad guys are kind of pivoting now. It's not just coming in through email and social engineering. They're sophisticated. They've got a lot more. They've got a lot more arrows in their quiver than just sending you an email to click on. A Ponemon Institute survey that went out. What was the root cause of the data breach? 21% was either an IoT device or a medical device. That's sobering. What's more sobering is the consequences of a cyber attack on patient care. 23% thought that it affected patient mortality. And there's studies out there by CISA that says, that it affects patient mortality. We've had a couple stories about people dying. But really, if you got computer equipment and you're a nurse taking care of 16 people and the computer equipment goes away, you're not caring for those same 16 people the same way anymore. Right? I mean, quality of patient care is going down. Whether they die or not, different story. But the idea is this is a critical infrastructure. When things go down, when a CT scanner goes down, when cardiac equipment goes down, it affects people. You're diverting ambulances to other hospitals in the area. And so we have to do something about this problem. So IT and OT devices, they're different. You look at the IT devices, the standard laptops and servers and things like that. That's different than a medical device. It's different than a alarm system. It's different than a refrigeration unit. It's different than an HVAC unit. Those are different categories of devices, all hooked to the network. Where they used to be different networks, they brought them together now. It's more economical, so everything's on the same network. You get into one device and you get into the network, you have the potential of getting into everything. There's no air gap anymore. So the problem with the OT devices is the complexity. They've got just think about unique protocols. What does unique protocol mean? Basically, these things talk in a different language. We all know TCP/IP. That's a communication language for IT devices. Pretty standard stuff. All the other devices, they don't talk in TCP/IP, at least not all of them. So they're communicating in Latin and Greek or whatever. And so the security tools that are being used to manage IT devices don't speak Greek or Latin. So when you get on the network and you start looking at packets of information and trying to figure out what these things are, you can't. Which is not a great place to be. Not knowing what's on your network, not being able to communicate with these devices. And the things that you need to know modality, you need to know the make, model, the OS type, what's the patch version, what kind of software you have on it, what's the MAC address. You need to know all these things about the device if you're actually going to do something, like know what the vulnerability is, know how. If you can't see it, you can't protect it. Gartner's come out with something called the Cyber Physical Systems Security Journey. Oh, down here on the bottom left is awareness. Like, hey, I think we probably have a problem here. Visibility, being able to see everything on the network, see the devices on the network. NIST cybersecurity framework, probably all heard of that. Identify is the first function. And then like ID AM1 is what's your inventory. ID AM2 is what's your software inventory. Back to visibility. You got to see. You have to be able to see what's. Same thing with the CIS controls. You got to see what's on. We have to see what you're dealing with, or else you can't deal with it. And then once you do, in a lot of situations, especially if you don't have a device like Medigate is a device. Deborah has Order. So there's different tools out there. That's called an automated discovery and security tool. So if you don't have a tool like that, when you put it in on your network and you go and it goes and shows you everything that's actually on your network, you have the oh wow moment. And immediately after the oh no moment, because now you're going to have to do something about it, right? Which is where you get into firefighting and what mitigations you're going to put in place now that you see you have all these different things, and then integration with your existing security tools, which were really designed for IT devices because you want to integrate those together, and then optimizing them. So IT devices, they're pretty far down the road for the most part. IoT devices, still pretty far down there. Medical devices, the majority are still kind of stuck in visibility, trying to figure out, they don't have visibility, or even if they get it, now what do? We got to start putting out fires and building management systems. So I presented at the ASHI conference, which is the Facilities Management Association for hospitals. Not everybody even knew we had one of those. They're just getting started. They are definitely in awareness. Oh, it's not cybersecurity, IT problem, right? Well, what if we decide we're going to update or patch something that brings your system down? Oh, well, that's a problem. We didn't want you to do that. So as you think about medical technology security, here's just kind of the basics of what you need to be trying to accomplish. Device discovery across everything. It's a first, you got to do it. You got to get all, then managing the vulnerability and risks of those devices. What are the vulnerability of the devices? What's and what's the criticality of the risk? Network protection, network segmentation, being able to isolate this thing to least privileges if you need to. Well, how is it communicating on the network? What's it talking to? Should it be talking to that? Does it need to provide clinical care? That's a totally different, that's very different than any other industry. Clinical care, you can't isolate a risk system if it needs to talk to the PACS. You know, you do that, it's a career limiting move. Then you've got threat detection, device management, lifecycle management, but what we're going to do today is we're going to talk a little bit about regulation and legislation around this. What's going on? So as you use that framework of those are the things you need to be doing with medical device cybersecurity, and let's kind of lay out what's going on across the country. 405D, which is, we get a laser pointer? We got a laser pointer. 405D right here, that's what's the best practices that came out of the assessment that turned into a high-tech law, which we're going to talk about those, but this is really where the healthcare best practices are coming from. Now, we're just going to talk about the medical device today, but it's really for the whole hospital. So as the industry is starting to look at what could be best practices, this is where they're going to go first, because it is a unique set of recommendations for hospitals for cybersecurity. Senator Warner put out a policy query called CIPS, Cybersecurity is Patient Safety, 17 policy considerations, easy read, and you just say, it's basically he was trying to gather information on how to do this. Who should be the sector risk management agency overseeing this for healthcare? Is it CISA or is it HHS? What about incentives for legacy medical devices? Cash for clunkers. What about changing HIPAA? It's 1990s. You know, all these, so this document, if you look up Warner and CIPS, it's more of a considerations, because this is what, right now, this is what's going on. Consideration on what we need to be doing. This HICP is Healthcare Industry Cybersecurity Managing Legacy Technology Security. It's a new document. If you just query HICP, you'll find it. 100 pages, 67 people on the committee, everything, how to protect medical device cybersecurity, legacy medical devices, which is going to be a problem for probably another decade. Can't get rid of these devices. We're not going to, unless the government steps up and just gives just a bunch of money to replace them, which I don't know, maybe. That's actually it's on the table for discussion right now. Not a good answer, because we'll just have the same problem in 5 years. We need to solve the problem. And the FDA's post-market guidance and the Section 3305, which is the Patch Act, they kind of go together. The FDA was given new powers of authority recently through Section 3305 of the Omnibus Consolidated Appropriations Act in December, which basically said, okay, FDA, you now have teeth to make the medical device manufacturers do some stuff, or you can punish them. There's consequences. Also, you can deny them their 510K process of getting new devices through. So stop giving me crap devices. Fix them, make them secure, and I want to know how you're going to patch them along the way, how you're going to update them. You're not just giving me something that can't be fixed if there's a problem. And an SBOM, the software bill of materials, has to be given. So just recently, you might have seen something coming out where it said the FDA is not going to exercise refuse to accept. Refuse to accept means I'm not accepting your application for 510K to bring this device online and be able to sell. I'm not going to refuse it because this is still all new. I only got my new powers in January. It's only April. I'm not going to say you haven't, done a good job. I'm going to give you till October to get me my SBOM, to show me how you're going to patch. I'm giving you some time. But in October, you're going to have 15 days to solve whatever you didn't do right, and then I'm just going to say no. So the FDA, so we basically stop the water from coming in the boat, the new risk from coming into the hospital. That's the idea here. Transfer the problem onto, not the problem, the responsibility of security onto the manufacturer, and have liability there. That also goes with the White House's national cybersecurity strategy. Don't have anything up here on it, but just off the top of my head, the White House national security strategy that just also came out, 5 pillars, if I remember these things. Defend the critical infrastructure, cybersecurity for critical infrastructures, which healthcare is one of them. 2 is disrupt and dismantle the threat actors out there. 3 is drive new security and resilience by changing the market. 4 is invest in resiliency, and 5 is international partnerships to go get the bad guys. So those are the 5 pillars. And I'll just say under number 1, which is defend cybersecurity critical infrastructure, the sub-bullet is minimum cyber hygiene requirements. 2 is private partnership and making regulations easier. Then under number 3, which is changing the market, is the White House is saying make vendors responsible for better security tools, not just the medical device manufacturers, but all software, all manufacturers. Stop giving us junk and then we're responsible. We get hit with ransomware, we get fined, the hospital gets fined, we're getting audited. We didn't do anything. We just bought your junk. We're trying to fix it. So the pushing, so that's across all industries. So there's a big change coming. These are all topics of discussion and how we're going to address that. So it's just in the news back on March 27th. Just reading the yellow sections. Biden administration secure the healthcare sector and medical devices against cyber attacks in 2023, working closely Health and Human Services standards for cybersecurity, or sorry, minimum standards for cybersecurity, considering federal grants for hospitals to adopt certain minimum cyber requirements for medical devices. I mean, it's not too much more clear. This is coming. What shape and form it takes, we don't know. Lots of people are talking about it, lots of groups, a lot of suggestions going up into what's called CPAC, which is the Cyber Critical Infrastructure Partnership Advisory Council. So this is over CISA. So they're taking a look at this. What do we do? What's probably a combination of policies by HHS, legislation by the Hill, some directives by the White House, but they're all, everybody bipartisan seems to be pushing in the same direction on this. So HICP 405D 2023. The document the document's been out since 2018. Let me back up. So over 230 experts, far smarter than I am, although I'm on the group here, and I think you're on the group, aren't you? Yeah, okay. And so got together and said, what are the best practices? They liked it so much, the government passed a law, HITECH, saying if you'll do these recognized security practices, new term, and you have a breach, the OCR, Office for Civil Rights, must consider not fining you, no fines, fees, or post-breach oversight. Kind of nice. It's a carrot. And the recognized security practices are NIST Cybersecurity Framework and the 405D. HICP. So NIST Cybersecurity, not really, NIST Cybersecurity is not really healthcare focused, and neither is, if you've heard of CPGs, which are Cybersecurity Performance Goals by CISA, which is CISA is the agency, Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Agency. They're really kind of the security, new security wing. And so, but they've got their best practices, but they're kind of like generic for all industries. This 405D is specific for healthcare. So they came out and said, okay, there's 5 threats. This was back in 2018. The 5 threats, they knew back then, medical devices affecting patient safety. And then here are the 10 things, the most impactful mitigations. Again, calling out medical devices. They knew, we knew back then that it was a problem. For medical devices, whether or not you are hacking in through them, because you can't put an agent on them. Like a CrowdStrike, they don't support that. You can't see the devices on the network. They're difficult to segment because you don't know what their clinical workflow is. They're designed for remote access by manufacturers. People like to either get in them to use them for a botnet, for sucking the power out of them, the processing power out of them, or use it to come in and move laterally into maybe the Active Directory system and escalate privileges, or if they would like to, they could shut down devices. You can hack an infusion pump and deliver all the contents into someone. That's scary. But we've never seen anything like that out there. But you can do it. So there's just medical devices are kind of like they're hooked to patients. So they're problematic. We always knew that. So but let's take a look at, as we drive into medical device cybersecurity, what does it look like as you go into that? And here on the left is kind of a breakdown of the sub practices. You've got asset management, which again, we'll just say the recommendation is going to be an asset discovery and security tool, because with tens of thousands of devices, being able to see them and then actually manage them that you really need at scale, you need some sort of help. If you're a small organization, you have to do this manually, then do it manually. But there are tools out there that will automate the discovery and help you with vulnerability and risk and mitigation. Endpoint protection, how do you manage, what do you do with endpoint detection if it doesn't support an agent? How does that even work? Identity access management, usually people are using MAC authentication bypass. We'll get into all this. Network is basically segmentation, vulnerability management, security operations, and then procurement. So these are all areas that are recommended, and they go into detail on. So this is the updated version, HICP 2023. We haven't talked about that. That comes out Monday. It should have come out in December. Our tax dollars at work. They wanted to make sure that they got it right. I'm sure it had nothing to do with the government moving slowly, but it's coming out on Monday. So there's a whole new, and the medical device cybersecurity section has doubled in size. So look for that on Monday. If you start seeing stuff coming around on the network, follow me on LinkedIn. I'll put it out there on LinkedIn, just Ty Greenhalgh, LinkedIn. But there's a lot more coming. This is what the asset management section looks like. And I wanted to point out here that they're saying automated asset discovery tool is recommended, and then also a CMMS, so that you can operationalize that data, get all the security data, and then feed it into some sort of a tool that can send out, okay, this needs to be patched, this needs to be done, network segmentation over here. Here are the discrete data elements related to security, so that we can get all that data together to help maintenance, to help with asset management, purchasing. So there's all sorts of reasons to get this information into a central repository. But the HICP 23 is coming out, and we'll talk just a little bit more. So let's go into detail on each one of these best practices, and just kind of give you a feel for what's written in the new update. So asset management, which is 9MA, 9 being mitigation number 9, M being medium-sized hospital, A being the first in the list. So this is for medium and large. They also have one for small hospitals. So we broke this up into 3 different sections. But the automated discovery and automated discovery and security tool is really the ability to go out and find the devices, identify them, and give you back meaningful information. So different people do it different way, different companies do it different way. The reason we're best in class 3 years in a row is because we don't use just AI and machine learning, which is great for ChatGPT or computer-assisted coding, which was pretty cool back in the day. But we use something called deep packet inspection, which means we don't just look at the header information and then, oh, this thing is this network traffic is comparable to this network traffic, and therefore a couple data points are the same. I'm going to say these 2 devices are the same. That's a logical guess, but it's a guess. Whereas if you're looking at the rest of the information, because you've learned how to speak Greek or Latin, now you know everything about that document, about that device, everything. And so you're not guessing anymore. You know the versions of software, the firmware, the manufacturer, everything. So, so getting that information provides you not only the software and hardware, but baseline network communications. Like, so my Alaris infusion pumps, once I identify all of those, I can tell you how they're all operating. They're all talking to 5 things, except this one, which is talking to China, which that may be a problem. So you got an anomaly there. This one device is communicating differently than the other devices, because I know what all the devices are and I know what all the communications are. So you can see how things start to get easier the more visibility you have, right? You can start making common sense decisions on how you're going to protect things. And then the computerized maintenance management system, single source of truth, and then automating the workflow so that, hey, we've got these devices, this thing needs network segmentation, send it out. Or, hey, I see I've got a default password here on this particular device, needs to be changed. Send it out here to a ticketing system in the CMMS so that next time somebody's going to touch the device, or I can tell you where it is too, because I know where it is on the network now. And so there's all sorts of benefits for integrating in and operationalizing. When you're talking about tens of thousands of devices, it's got to be done efficiently and to do it at scale. And that's where the CMMS is going to come into place. So endpoint protection, a little different. So the endpoint protection, you can't put agents like a CrowdStrike, Falcon on most medical devices because they just weren't designed to take on any new, the memory's not there. The system isn't designed to load new software on it. So you can't load an agent like you can a regular IT device, a laptop or whatnot. So how do you integrate with a endpoint? What do you do? Well, first thing you can do is I should have said ADS here instead of Medigate. I apologize. So your asset discovery and security tool can import data from, say, a CrowdStrike, from an endpoint, so that we would know what all the IT devices security profiles are, what versions, what patches. So we see a lot of that already, but we're validating it because there's an agent installed on that device. It knows everything about that laptop. Tell me so I can validate, and I'll update that in my system so that you get a better view of all the devices and their security profiles. So just think about it. The more information you have on the environment and every single device, the better your risk can be, risk management. I know which devices are problematic and which ones aren't, the more information I have. So getting that information from the endpoints in, but then also because we can actually export information back out, because we import in the MDS2. Does everybody know what an MDS2 is? The medical device security manufacturer's disclosure statement. Comes out with every device, and it says whether or not an endpoint can be installed on the device. Well, we import those in, associate it to the device, and we can tell whether or not there's an endpoint installed on the device. We can tell that because we're looking at all the device information in the deep packet inspection. And if there's not one, we'll tell the endpoint, hey, you could put an agent on this thing. And so you expand out, you're actually impacting and increasing the visibility of your existing IT tools where they should be. MAC authentication bypass here for identity access management, big problem. So what's really happening is that people down in the in security and in networking, the device, they want to put it online. Should I deny that device? I don't know what it is. I can't tell. Should I let it on? Should I not let it on? What if it's involved in clinical care? I think I know what it is, but I'm not sure. So MAC authentication bypass, they just let it on. Happening all over the place. And then I'll put it in a VLAN. It'll be safe. With all the other stuff, I don't know what it is. Just, that's like not a good strategy, right? So trying to manage that whole process, that's not how you want to go about doing it. And as a matter of fact, even so, if you can tell that device has you can see the IP, You can see the MAC address, and you can see the manufacturer. A lot of people will say, okay, well, that's enough for me because my infusion pumps have the Summit data communications network interface card, because that's really the MAC address I'm seeing. I'm not seeing the MAC address of the device. I'm seeing the MAC address of the NIC card. And so I'm going to put a network policy in place to lock down all of these devices that have that card and call them infusion pumps. But guess what? Patient monitoring systems use the same NIC card. So it's just, if you're trying to manage access without clear visibility, you just end up with bad policies, and you're not really getting to security. You're doing something, but you're not being effective. And then you move into network management. Within these the asset discovery and security tools, the ability to actually see what the network flow is for this device. You know, what's it communicating with? Should it be? You know, should it not be? So you can start getting into clinical care and what, when you make your network segments and you say all these devices, say here I've got little boxes around the patient monitor needs to talk, these two devices need to talk. Over here, the MRI needs to talk with the PACS and the clinical engineering workstations. So you can start putting in network segmentation policies, which are automated. It automates the process. These tools automate that process by looking at the behavior, understanding the workflow, and sending out the access control list that will be imported into something like Cisco ICE and then implemented. But again, you got to see the device, you got to understand the workflow, you got to see all this stuff, and then automate it at scale. So this is risk reduction at scale, but again, all coming down to visibility. So for vulnerability management, again, they don't really operate well. They don't play well in the sandbox. These tools don't play well, like Rapid7 doesn't play well in the sandbox with medical devices. Medical devices weren't ever designed to be scanned. So when you do, they can be disrupted. Their performance can be disrupted. And if they are taking care of patients at the time, that's another career limiting move. So you just, so many people, they don't scan medical devices or anything around medical devices. They don't want to, but then you don't know what the device is or anything about it, right? So you kind of have there's an issue there. So how does that work with these asset discovery and security tools? Well, you can oopsie. Come on. That was the wrong button, by the way. So here you're able to ingest from the vulnerability scanner a list of vulnerabilities that the scanner is seeing, and again, changing what, as you're looking at medical devices, what you think is an indicator to confirm. So like everything that the vulnerability scanners are seeing, and the asset discovery tools and the security tool is out there also looking at, but the vulnerability scanner can send you the information to confirm everything that you think about the environment, to include the IT devices. Again, more information about the ecosystem that the medical devices are in will give you a better picture of what is the real risk and how to prioritize. And then kind of reverse is the asset discovery and security tools being able to send back to the vulnerability scanner. By the way, these are the medical devices, and their IP addresses don't scan those. Like, okay, so the vulnerability scanners, they never scan that VLAN with all that stuff in it that we don't know what it is. They never scan that because they don't know what the medical devices are and they don't want to knock those over. But if once we see which ones are medical devices and can be scanned and can't be, we can provide exclusion lists or inclusion lists and say, you can go ahead and scan these IP addresses. These are cool to scan. Don't scan these. These are medical devices which you could affect clinical care. And again, you're expanding the functionality of your existing tools and integrating with your existing security stack. So it's not really only about taking care of your medical devices. It's improving and integrating all your devices into one system, so you're leveraging all the information to reduce the risk in your environment overall. So moving to procurement and security evaluations. We talked earlier about what the MDS2 was. That's the ability for the manufacturer's disclosure statement for medical device security, and we import that in. It's different formats, but it's information on the device, and it's required. Well, remember back we talked in the beginning of this where the FDA has new powers of authority, and one of those new powers of authority is medical device manufacturers are now going to provide me an SBOM on all new devices, not the legacy stuff, but on the new devices coming in. I'm going to get an SBOM. An SBOM is a software bill of materials. It's basically the components, open source, off the shelf, libraries. What's the software in the medical device? And log4j. Would be really nice to know which devices had log4j, so I could just run a report, pull up those devices instead of having to go search every single device if there was a vulnerability in that particular piece of software. So that SBOM is going to be great, except there's kind of 3 stages to an SBOM. There's the generation, the exchange, and the consume. We're kind of in the generation phase. This has been worked on for a while now. We've got some basic standards for what an SBOM is. So we're kind of there, but nobody's really producing them at scale. Manufacturers aren't really doing that yet. They can, but it's a whole process and a system that really hasn't been tested out in scale. But they're going to be producing these things. Now, they're going to produce them, and they're going to give them to the FDA, because that's who said they needed them. But eventually, the idea is that the hospitals are going to get their hands on these, and they're going to know what's inside the devices that they own. And that's a big leap, because all they're going to be doing is providing you a file. How do you consume that file for an asset, listing all of its components, tie it to your asset inventory, and then run risk and vulnerability analysis against it? It's really kind of not here yet. We have the capability of doing that. It's not fully automated yet, because it doesn't have to be, because there's not enough SBOMs coming out that we should even worry about it. But that's coming. And the White House has called for SBOMs back in its executive order for national security, national cybersecurity improvement. They called for that, and the FDA is calling for it. So the SBOMs, it's going to be a big deal. It's going to help out a lot. It's going to help bring risk down, because it's increasing visibility. So with procurement, intake triage, I imagine a lot of your organizations, as you're buying a new device and you're onboarding it, part of the onboarding process to do is a risk analysis. So you want to be able to do risk analysis on new devices coming in, and that's where the little boat with the water, if you're just taking care of all the device cybersecurity problems you have in your existing inventory, but you're just bringing on more devices without checking, you're just bringing on more water into the ship, and while you're trying to get out the stuff you got to plug the hole. So stopping the onboarding of more risk and how you go about doing that in the new HICP updated 2023 version talks a little bit about some ideas on how to do that. Couple of other tools that are out there. There's a group called the Healthcare Sector Coordinating Council that I'm on, and we have written a number of different publications. One of them here for contract negotiation, so I put it under the procurement. As you're negotiating contracts for new devices, managing the risk in the contract, pushing some of the responsibility back as much as you can to the manufacturer can be done in contracts. This document was created in collaboration with Mayo, Cleveland Clinic, Kaiser, several attorneys, medical device manufacturers, and we hammered out 52 clauses that were almost pre-negotiated. Like, this is where we could balance and share risk on this particular issue. It's a great place. You can just search for the MC2 model contract language in medtech cybersecurity. I think at the end of this, there's and I provided a PDF. There's links, resources to these documents. But if you go download that, it's free, and it'll give you a lot of language that you might want to get over to your procurement department to consider in adding in to contracts to further reduce your risk for bringing on new devices. And then as we start talking about end of life, end of support, end of guaranteed support, all these different shades of gray on devices that, the FDA takes this, the FDA process, the manufacturer develops product, that takes X number of years. Then it's got to go through the FDA approval process. That takes X number of years. The operating system on these devices sometimes is out of date before it ever even gets sold to the hospital. So, legacy, that's why they're saying, the FDA is saying, I want to know what your patching process is going to be. I want to know that this can be updated. I want to see what your voluntary vulnerability communications disclosure program is going to look like, because you have to assume risk on this thing that you're going to help fix it along the way, because we got 15 more years of this device that's going to be at the hospital. So kind of with all that said, this HICP document, Healthcare Industry Cybersecurity, Managing Legacy Technology and Security document, it goes through governance and the communication between the MDM and the HDO, what that should look like, what the cyber risk management should look like. And they mention these asset discovery and security tools like Medigate, but they call it passive network monitoring is the term they use. Different term, same thing. How do you use those? And then there's the patching cycle. There's future proofing. There's just a whole host of strategies, rubber meets the road type strategies on how to manage those legacy medical devices. The other thing I forgot to mention, Deborah, specifically for you, there's also another document that just came out by, it's the NIST, which is the National Institute of Standards and Technology. You've heard of NIST Cybersecurity Framework. The NIST Cybersecurity Framework implementation guide for healthcare. And kind of it's how you go about taking NIST, the identify, detect, protect, respond, and recover, right? And apply it to healthcare. And so that document also just came out. I think that'll help you in your creating an implementation, like what are we going to do here? At least you can, and it's put out by the government, so there's no, you can copy and paste all day. But no, probably just give you some good ideas, right? But they've also mapped that to HICP, the Healthcare Industry Cybersecurity Practices. So the two are mapped, and they mention the HICP in that document a lot. So what you're going to find is anywhere in this conversation that's going on about minimums, best practices, minimum standards, best practices, medical device cybersecurity, grants, incentives, workforce development, all these ideas that are being shared about how we're going to, as a nation, fix healthcare cybersecurity. Every single conversation has HICP in it. Every single one. And I'm in a lot of those conversations. So it's coming out on Monday. Just follow me on LinkedIn. I won't crush you with a bunch of advertisements for my company about what we're doing. My chief marketing officer gets really mad at me for that, but I'm like, come on, if you want them to pay attention, only give them the good stuff. So look for that. I think that'll help out a lot, and you can share that with your organization. Also, that document can be used. The very first document in it, because it's like a 4-part series, just an overview, and then there's small hospitals, and then medium and large, and then they've got some tools and stuff. So, but the first one, it's a really great way to help educate people about cybersecurity in your organization. There's all sorts of downloads and posters, and it's coming straight from HHS. And if you want to write this one out, it's 405d.hhs.gov. That'll get you to the 405D website. Again, under HHS, you have to navigate under resources, I think, to find HICP, but you can find it. But again, that's the 2018 version. The new one, Monday, is coming out. They won't announce it until the following week, but it's HIMSS next week, which if you're there, I'll also be speaking on this topic, much more in depth on this on the new update in general, because it's for the whole hospital. We only talked about medical devices. I'll be speaking with Eric Decker from Intermountain Healthcare, who is the chair over the group. So again, this is a super hot topic, and so you can share this information with your colleagues, and along with, I would say, the contract language and the HICMALTs. So kind of the question is, where are you on this journey? 60% of organizations are here in awareness, so don't feel bad. I mean, this is going to take a while. It's a journey. And then 30% are somewhere in visibility through firefighting. Very few are down the road. We have, I know of some. I think Deborah, you may be further. I know you're further along than most, but it's a journey, right? She's got a competitive product, so I'm just saying, when it comes to these tools, I'll just say, I'm a vendor. Don't trust me, right? But don't trust the other guy either. It's just go do your due diligence. Get the products, put them in side by side. All the companies will be glad. Which one's got better visibility? Which one's got better this or that for you? They work great. You should be exploring them. If you're not, if for no other reason, now this is coming. Whether or not they're going to pay for it, and there'll be grants, that doesn't matter. That's either it gets paid for or not. It probably help get senior leadership's attention to investigate and get ahead of the power curve, so that when you hear it, you already know which one you want to buy or know what you want to do in this particular case. But you probably should be thinking about those minimum standards. How can you provide? I'm just thinking, well, also the Joint Commission has been called in to this. I don't know what their role is going to be, but in 2021, CMS was called out by the OIG that says you're not doing anything for connected medical device cybersecurity. CMS said, well, maybe we should ask the Joint Commission what they think. and from an accreditation perspective. So I just did an interview with Herman McKinsey, who is with Amy hosted the interview, and we did an interview which will be posted. I'm not sure what their role is really going to be, but they started a task force to look at connected medical devices. Now you just kind of step back and go, this is, remember I talked about being psychic for my last marriage? Well, it's obviously not too clear. I wouldn't have been married in the first place, right? Because she's an ex. But you know, so you kind of see this landscape and you go, okay, I'm not sure. I see is whether Joint Commission gets involved or there's going to be minimum standards, and you got best practices over here, but there's going to be, I'm going to have to do something. Probably no matter where it comes down, what's your inventory? Number one. Got to be number one on the list. Number one on NIST CSF, number one on CIS controls, number one on HICP, number one. I mean, it's the number one thing you got to do. If you don't know what's on your network, how can you protect it, right? I mean, it's just kind of common sense, number one. And I guarantee you, if you don't have a tool that's looking at your building, define your building management systems and your medical device tools, you don't know what's on your network. So, and whether you're going to go do that manually or you get a tool to do it, that's the automated discovery and security recommendation. That's why that recommendation is coming out in HICP. It's like, got to do something about your inventory. Get that under control. So you've got ransomware is not going away. It's too much money in it. They're making too much money. Although they, remember we talked about those 5 pillars where we're getting international partnerships together, and we're going to go after the threats. I think that was number 2. The bad actors. We're going to disrupt and dismantle the bad actors. Just this week, the Genesis marketplace was taken down, which is a marketplace out there on the dark web where the bad guys go to buy their data so that they can do bad stuff. Down. In January, took down the Hive ransomware gang, $100 million worth of damage in healthcare and ransomware. So, you know, we're out there. We're going to fight it. These pillars are real. Part of the pillars are minimum security practices. IT versus OT. We now know there's a difference. We talked about best practices. HICP's going to be foundational. Visibility, and then the last thing I'll leave you with, which is just kind of, I could do a whole presentation on this, is nobody's got any money to spend on this stuff. They don't have money to spend on anything, right? I mean, we're all hurting the hospitals. But when you do this correctly, and what at least we can do, is you get visibility on on everything about that device. We also get utilization data. What's utilization data on the 5,000 infusion pumps you have? Is if it's 48%, you have too many. Do you have capacity in your MRIs? You got 3 of them. Do you need 3? How can you move one over? Do you need to buy another one, or can you just move it over to this new facility instead of buying another one? What about your security, your maintenance contracts? Why are you paying top dollar platinum response time on these devices when you got 7 of them and they're operating at 70% capacity? You can actually just go change your maintenance contracts. I don't need 2-hour turnaround time. I can live for 2 days. I can just shift things around. Everybody starts changing their business practices when they start seeing the data. Why are we running our business this way from an asset management perspective? Why do we have all these things? Or we should be charging differently. Or why does this hospital do 3 MRIs an hour and this hospital only do 2? So let's figure out what the best practices are and get these guys doing 3. It's how you manage a fixed cost business. So as you look to try to go justify the price of this thing, and how it's not only is it coming and you should do it, you need to kind of get prepared for it anyway, is that happy to help you in kind of doing an estimate on what your benefits might be, so that we kind of translate risk reduction into CFO speak. right? It's like, because they're not going to understand reducing vulnerabilities translating into dollars, but they would understand asset management. So kind of just a throw out there. And then you got the resources. So if you can get the PDF, I gave Kristen a PDF. So hopefully that'll be online for you. If not, my contact information down there at the bottom, ty.g@claroty.com. Happy to help you with any questions you have. If you didn't, there's a lot of information. Get you just whatever, but also a copy of the presentation. If you'd like a copy of the presentation, just reach out to me either through LinkedIn. Love to have you, follow me on LinkedIn or connect with me. And or if you just want the presentation, I'm just happy to shoot that over to you.